Good afternoon, just gone past midday. Now, see how the old cameraman's doing? Very good cameraman. Nice steady hand they've got. Right. Justice. Well. The world throughout all time has been awash with injustice. Brilliant. Didn't take a genius to work that one out. On the other hand, people want to get along. On the other hand, someone wants what someone else has got, so they kill for it. And on it goes. I shall get on to it specifically. There is an injustice playing out in my own life at present, but relative to the monstrous injustices that have been meted out upon countless human beings throughout all time, it's absolutely nothing. It still hurts, but I have sufficient insight to recognize that my little injustice is pretty jolly minor. Yes, God knows. This older London friend I've been chatting with over the weekend especially, but I've known him for over a year and a bit now. Proper old Londoner. You know, what about feeding the world's starving population with 2 fish, as Christ did? The fish and loaves, the miracle of feeding the 5,000 and feeding the 4,000. Words to the effect, you know, if there is a God sort of thing, well, he's making a pretty fine mess of things. That is a sentiment I've certainly come across before. I am a Christian. And I'm not a stupid Christian either. I'm not a sort of blind, follow my leader type of Christian. I'm exactly the reverse. If anyone wants to go that way, I'm almost certain to go that way. I absolutely do not follow the crowd. I do have a brain which still more or less works. I watched Dominic Raab now. He seems to change government jobs as frequently as he changes his, I don't know, what does one change frequently? Something like that. Yes, quite underwear. Anyway, he's got a new title now, but he was something, wasn't he? Foreign Secretary, wasn't it? And all this MP who's been stabbed to death and the repercussions of that and democracy at stake and, you know, what the individual human beings are feeling and their families and so on. And do you try and work in a normal way, which includes meeting members of the public, or do you start building ever increasing barriers around yourself? I mean, I'm a white African. I'm born in Cape Town originally. I had a Scottish missionary ancestor, so I'm a Scottish South African, if you like. But my father was English from King's Lynn. And I haven't lived out in South Africa for yonks now, but I have been back, and progressively the whites, by and large, have had to go in for more and more barriers, security, fences, barbed wire, horrid stuff. And they are effectively then imprisoned in their own homes. This wall building, I mean, the Holy Land, Israel, they've gone for these huge 18-foot walls. I actually walked with this lovely girl, Sally, who was studying, it's called the Midrash on the Torah, the commentaries on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. I met her at St. David's University College, South Wales, Lampeter, 1980, 81, I was there, so going back a bit. We're all just sort of people. If you start building these walls, ultimately it creates enmity and sort of mistrust and hatred. It fosters that. You know, you bring the wall down, the Berlin Wall, wasn't it, in Germany. You know, people meet and realise that basically they're you know, they probably had common ancestors for a start, either side of East and West Germany. So, I am a Christian. Christ's teaching, if they strike you on one cheek, turn unto them the other cheek. Every single hair on the head of your fellow man, woman, and child is precious and special. Well, then respond to an untoward act or with love. That's the answer. Not with building ever more stockpiles of arms and etc., etc., etc. That is practically what the world has done. We accept this now, this nuclear umbrella. I mean, there's no longer the CND in the forefront, campaign for nuclear disarmament, in the forefront of people's consciousness. Anyway, Dominic Raab being interviewed on morning breakfast television. And personally, I mean, it must be horrendous. You know, these political types, and they go in for it for whatever reason, but we do need someone to run the country, for heaven's sake, and hopefully good people, you know, genuine, conscientious types like this MP, whom I knew nothing about whatsoever prior to this, but he'd been in politics, I think, for virtually 40 years, or an MP rather for 40 years, so probably in politics for longer. He was 69 years old, 5 children, and apparently just a lovely, genuinely caring chap, you know, trying to care for his local constituents, apparently especially in Southend-on-Sea, or wherever, Southend, it's Lee-on-Sea, isn't it, I think, where he was stabbed in the Methodist church. I had a friend down there once, a sailing chum, well, a work chum, but he used to sail big yachts as well. Well, I mean, I've spoken about this. We, the West, slaughtered indiscriminately tens of thousands of Iraqi citizens, so we, the West, could continue to keep control of the Middle Eastern oil situation in Saudi Arabia. That's my take on the second war in Iraq. And then there's going to be a backlash to that from the Muslim youth, what they call radicalized people. But, you know, if someone came and killed your relatives, what would you think? I mean, the First World War had its origins way before underlying tensions. I mean, how could, whatever it was, the one Archduke was killed or something, wasn't he? Austrian Archduke, I think that was the blue touch paper that set the whole First World War off? Is it Archduke Ferdinand? If I get it wrong, I apologise. And off we go. And then they famously, obviously, played football, apparently, in the first Christmas or something, the English and the Germans, on Christmas Eve or whatever it was. And obviously the generals on both sides were having blue fits. Don't kill each other, you're not allowed to play football. It's absolutely part of Western culture, this. When push comes to shove, we fight, we kill the other lot. And it's anti-Christian. In my particular case, I'm not a priest through very high church, Church of England, at the Cathedral and Abbey Church of St. Albans, where I spent an awful lot of time back in the 90s. So when I was in my early 40s, I was looking very long and hard at becoming a priest through the Church of England. And eventually the penny dropped. The Queen is the supreme governor of the Church of England, but she is the head of state, the head of the army, and effectively she sanctions, as a purported Christian, war, killing. And that simply cannot be. Likewise for the whole of the Church of England. By and large, you're hard-pressed to find a sort of cleric within the Church of England who would speak out against armed conflict, which is, it's total hypocrisy. If you are genuinely, you receive the love of God through Christ within you, that has to be the end of all killing. The whole point about St. Alban is exactly that. He was a Roman centurion, as far as we know, in charge of 100 troops, who, if told to by the Roman emperor, would go out and kill. That's what they were there for. And Amphibolus came along. Alban saw the light and refused to continue killing, and that is why he was martyred. And he's venerated as the first British martyr. Well, so on the one hand, there's that aspect of the situation. A man who chose, because of his acceptance of the love of God through Christ, to stop killing. Amen. And yet on it goes. Every generation finds an excuse. Anyway, just briefly on my own personal injustice, for what it's worth, I'm now finding difficulty in getting a solicitor. If the old bill, the police, were taking backhanders because of the drugs dealing going on in St. Michael's Square, and essentially I've got caught up in it by standing up to the drugs going around me, I can see no other sensible explanation. It went on for weeks. I was being harassed by these neighbours. I shan't even mention their racial origins. You've got to be so careful. I was watching old Dominic Raab. He knows how to choose his words. Well, so do I. Or not, or whatever. The best answer is just go button it. Say nothing. Plead, I think it's the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment or something in America. You have a right to silence, and silence, I think I'm right, in English law, indicates assent, not dissent. Anyway, I'm inclined to speak, but with circumspection in my own situation at present, because seemingly in England we're not allowed to speak our minds anymore without the thought police coming and arresting you and charging you and such like. I'd had weeks of harassment from these neighbours, calling me a paedophile, for heaven's sake. Well, if I used a rude phrase about them, they could have been from outer Mongolia. It wasn't the land of their origin that I was concerned about. The concern was my personal safety, because if the word gets out that that man is a paedophile, you get killed for it, given a damn good kicking in a dark alleyway, and the police did nothing. Well, and the courts don't want to touch that. All they want to was focus on one little moment when I used an untoward phrase about this neighbour. Well, one way or another, I'm going to bring out the injustice there in my little case. The police can't get away with this. Okay, there were, I believe, 6 999 calls, 5 101 calls over a period of 2.5 weeks, various accusations flying around, and utterly nothing done whatsoever by the English Northumbrian police. And my conclusion is they must be involved with the drugs dealing. Sadly. And it's easier to sort of get rid of me. I belong to God. I believe God has led me there to Alnwick in Northumbria, and specifically to that particular property with those particular neighbours, and then all the stuff that unfolded and continues to unfold. I'm currently under a bail condition. I'm not allowed to go not only to my own home, but to the whole of Alnwick. If I were to go there now, I would be arrested. Well, it's absurd. For 4 more months. They've made me homeless for another 4 months. I've already had 3 months of it. I mean, it's just ludicrous. All on the lies of one individual human being, basically. That's what the matter is based upon. Utter, complete, total lies by one specific woman. And I'm hung out to dry. Right, enough of that. I don't think I said anything untoward. Hopefully not. Curiously, as a Christian, I almost find this a blessing. See, Christ said nothing. He went as a lamb to the slaughter. He did not defend himself. He also said, birds of the air have nests and foxes have holes. I have nowhere to lay my head. Well, again, then, curiously, I feel blessed. I'm in pretty much the same circumstance. Love is the answer. Respond to whatever life throws at you with love. You don't have to like people. Obviously, we're going to fall out, hence the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them that trespass against us. And that has to be genuine. You forgive people, but you don't have to like them, for heaven's sake. Of course we're going to fall out. You're bound to. It's human nature. You get on with some people and there are others you're never going to get on with. So you don't have to like everyone, but you must absolutely love, or at least attempt to love everyone. Amen. Got my old candle lit. Well, it's only a tea light. I can't get candles here. we go. The light of Christ shining in this dark world. Amen.